The air in Great Smoky Mountains National Park can hang heavy, a humid embrace clinging to ancient trees and mist-shrouded peaks. It is a place of profound beauty, where emerald forests climb towards an endless sky and rivers carve timeless paths through granite and shale. But beneath the serene surface, the mountains hold their own indifferent secrets, tales whispered on the wind, stories of those who ventured in and never returned. In the summer of 2023, a young woman named Sarah Jenkins, full of life and an unshakable spirit, embarked on a solo trek into this very wilderness and vanished like morning fog. 15 months later, a park ranger, performing a routine survey of wildlife, made a discovery inside an eagle's nest that would unravel everything investigators believed, revealing a truth far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. Stay with us until the very end to uncover the full story of Sarah's disappearance, a mystery that defied every expectation. And while you are here, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more true stories from the heart of the wild. Tell us in the comments, from what city are you watching this video? Sarah Jenkins, a 22-year-old college graduate brimming with an unyielding love for the natural world, had spent months meticulously planning her solo journey through the Great Smoky Mountains. Her backpack, a familiar extension of her slender frame, was packed with precision, every item accounted for, every contingency considered. She was not a novice to the wild. Her childhood had been a tapestry woven with camping trips and hiking excursions through state parks. The Smokies, with their ancient allure and challenging trails, represented a new frontier, a test of her growing independence. On the morning of her departure, the air was crisp, the sky a vast canvas of cerulean blue. She sent a final text message to her parents, a brief, upbeat note promising a call on her return date just 3 days away. The image that accompanied it was of her smiling face framed by the towering hardwoods, a picture of pure contentment. Then she stepped onto the winding path, disappearing into the embrace of the mountains, a solitary figure against the vast green wilderness. The trail, narrow and winding, welcomed her with dappled sunlight and the distant murmur of a hidden stream. She felt the familiar rush of peace, the calming solitude that only nature could provide. Each step was a rhythm, a meditation, drawing her deeper into the heart of the forest. The outside world with its demands and distractions melted away. There was only the rustle of leaves, the scent of damp earth, and the whisper of the ancient trees. She was exactly where she wanted to be, completely at peace, completely alone. The 3 days passed with a deceptive swiftness, each hour marked by Sarah's parents, Eleanor and David, with a growing sense of anticipation. Eleanor had baked Sarah's favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, a sweet tradition for every homecoming. David had cleaned Sarah's room, a subtle act of preparation, ensuring everything was just as she liked it. They pictured her returning, sun-kissed and exhilarated, recounting tales of her adventures, the triumphs of challenging trails, the quiet beauty of ancient forests. The moment the clock ticked past her expected arrival time, a subtle shift occurred in the quiet, comfortable rhythm of their home. It was not panic, not yet. More a faint, discordant note in the otherwise harmonious symphony of their lives. Eleanor checked her phone for the 100th time, the screen a blank, unyielding window. No new messages. No missed calls. David, usually absorbed in the evening news, found his attention constantly drifting to the front door, to the driveway. A silent vigil. He tried Sarah's number first. a calm, reassuring voice in his mind dismissing any fleeting worries. Perhaps she was just delayed, caught in a patch of bad signal, or simply extending her immersion in nature's embrace. The phone rang 5 times, then 10, each unanswered ring a small, insistent drumbeat of unease. He left a voicemail, his voice carefully casual. "Hey, sweetie, just checking in. Give us a call when you get a chance." The casualness was a deliberate shield against the nascent fear that began to unfurl its dark wings within him. Hours stretched, each minute a slow, agonizing drip. The cookies sat untouched on the counter. The news played on, unheard. Eleanor's initial concern deepened into a cold, persistent dread. She tried Sarah's number again, then again, her fingers trembling slightly with each press of the call button. The silence on the other end was no longer a minor inconvenience. It was a vast echoing void, swallowing all their hopes. This was not like Sarah. She was meticulous, always considerate, always aware of her parents' anxieties. To miss a check-in, especially after a solo trip into the wilderness, was entirely out of character. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple that felt cruelly vibrant against their growing despair, David made the difficult decision. He remembered the park ranger's advice during Sarah's trip planning. If contact is lost for more than 24 hours, especially with a solo hiker, notify authorities. It had been nearly 12 hours past her scheduled return. The 24-hour mark felt too far away, an eternity of agonizing uncertainty. His voice, usually steady, wavered slightly as he dialed the emergency number for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park Rangers. He explained the situation, the planned route, Sarah's detailed itinerary, the last known contact. He could hear the ranger's measured professional tone, the questions sharp and precise, designed to extract every piece of relevant information. A knot tightened in his stomach. They were no longer waiting for a call. They were reporting a missing person. The night that followed was a blur of frantic phone calls to family and friends, desperate for any news, any stray message, any flicker of hope. But there was nothing. Only the chilling, unsettling silence. The early hours of the next morning brought a grim efficiency to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Before the first rays of sun had fully pierced the canopy, a small, highly trained search and rescue team, led by Ranger Miller, was already mobilizing. Ranger Miller, a man whose face bore the lines of years spent navigating these very mountains, understood the brutal calculus of wilderness disappearances. Every hour counted. The odds of a positive outcome diminished with the passage of time, especially in terrain as unforgiving and vast as the Smokies. Their first priority was to confirm Sarah's point of entry. David had provided precise details about the trailhead Sarah intended to use, a less frequented but well-marked path leading to a series of scenic overlooks. It was here, at the small gravel parking area, that the first tangible piece of evidence emerged. Sarah's car. It was a modest, dark blue sedan, neatly parked just as David had described. The sight of it, untouched and seemingly abandoned, sent a fresh wave of dread through David and Eleanor, who had insisted on being present, their faces etched with exhaustion and raw anxiety. The car offered no immediate clues. Its doors were locked, the windows were up, no signs of struggle, no notes. Just the quiet presence of a vehicle awaiting a driver who had not returned. Ranger Miller's team fanned out, beginning a meticulous grid search of the immediate area around the trailhead. They looked for anything out of place, a dropped water bottle, a discarded snack wrapper, a scuff mark on the trail. Nothing. The path itself, worn smooth by countless hikers, offered no fresh footprints, no discernible sign that Sarah had passed this way recently. The forest floor, a rich tapestry of decaying leaves and pine needles, seemed to swallow all traces. Simultaneously, other rangers began interviewing anyone who had been on or near Sarah's planned trail in the preceding days. They questioned returning hikers with a practiced gentleness, their voices calm but persistent. "Did you see a young woman, tall with light brown hair, carrying a distinctive blue and gray backpack?" They showed Sarah's photograph, a hopeful, vibrant image that seemed incongruous with the grave tone of the inquiry. Some hikers remembered seeing a solitary figure matching Sarah's description. One couple recalled a brief exchange with a polite young woman, mentioning her excitement for the trail ahead, her enthusiasm for a multi-day trek. They remembered her stopping to take a panoramic photo near the initial ascent. This confirmed Sarah had indeed entered the park. Another lone hiker, an older gentleman with a thick beard and weathered eyes, reported seeing Sarah near the first major overlook, approximately 3 miles in. He noted her methodical pace and the quality of her gear. "She looked like she knew what she was doing," he commented, his voice tinged with concern. "Very prepared. Not like some of the day trippers you see." He had offered a brief nod of acknowledgement, and she had returned it with a small, polite smile. That was the last confirmed sighting. The details, though few, painted a consistent picture. Sarah was on her intended path, well into the wilderness, and seemingly in good spirits. The initial search confirmed her presence in the park, but offered no explanation for her absence. The vastness of the mountains loomed, silent and impassive, holding its secrets close. The sun climbed higher, warming the forest, but casting long, disquieting shadows in the hearts of those who searched. The scale of the task ahead became chillingly apparent. The sun had just crested the highest peaks, casting long, ethereal shadows across the valleys as Ranger Miller's team, accompanied by David, pushed deeper into the wilderness. Their objective was Sarah's planned first campsite, a designated backcountry spot known for its proximity to a clear mountain stream and a relatively flat, sheltered area. According to Sarah's detailed itinerary, this was where she intended to spend her first night, approximately 8 miles from the trailhead. Every step on the winding, uphill trail felt heavy, laden with the unspoken anxieties of the search party. The air, cool and damp in the early morning, carried the scent of pine and rich earth, a stark contrast to the tightening dread in their chests. After nearly 3 hours of steady hiking, their headlamps slicing through the lingering pre-dawn gloom, they arrived at the coordinates. The site was exactly as described on the park map, a small cleared area by the rushing water, surrounded by towering hemlocks. But as they swept their powerful beams across the ground, a collective silence fell over the group. The campsite was empty, not simply unoccupied, but disturbingly bare. There was no tent pitched, no sleeping bag unrolled, no cooking gear neatly arranged. The small circular fire pit, usually showing remnants of recent use, was cold and undisturbed, filled with a scattering of dry leaves. Ranger Miller, his brow furrowed, began a methodical sweep, his eyes missing nothing. The ground, though somewhat rocky, retained some impressions. He knelt, examining a faint indentation in the soil near a large boulder. "Looks like a sleeping pad was here," he murmured, pointing to the rectangular compression in the earth. "And possibly a small footprint. Maybe a hiking boot." He moved to another spot. Here, a bit of disturbed earth. Something was set down here, perhaps a backpack. These were subtle clues, easily missed by an untrained eye, but to Miller, they spoke volumes. Sarah had been here. She had reached her destination. David, his heart hammering against his ribs, paced the perimeter, desperate for any concrete sign of his daughter. He spotted a small, brightly colored object partially buried under a cluster of ferns. He reached for it, his fingers brushing against something smooth and metallic. It was a carabiner, a small, yet significant piece of climbing equipment Sarah often used to secure her gear. This was undeniably hers, but why was it here, detached from her main pack? Its presence, while confirming she had been at the site, deepened the mystery. Where was her tent? Her large hiking backpack? Her sleeping system? These were not items a prepared hiker would simply abandon or misplace. They were essential for survival in the backcountry. The discovery was perplexing. It suggested Sarah had indeed made it to her planned camp, likely setting up some form of temporary shelter, perhaps even spending part of the night there. But then, something had happened, something that compelled her to pack up or leave in a hurry, taking only some of her belongings, or perhaps none at all. The absence of her main gear was particularly alarming. It implied that whatever had occurred, it had been sudden, leaving no time for a proper pack-up, or that her primary equipment had been taken from the site. The peaceful setting, surrounded by the majestic quiet of the mountains, now felt eerily unsettling, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, guarding an unseen secret. The initial relief of finding her car, then confirming her presence at the trailhead, was now eclipsed by a profound sense of confusion and a chilling new set of questions. The search was no longer just about finding a lost hiker. It was about understanding what had happened at this silent, empty camp. The mountains, vast and indifferent, offered no easy answers. The discovery of the seemingly abandoned campsite, a silent testament to Sarah's presence, yet a chilling void where her essential gear should have been, cast a long, unsettling shadow over the search efforts. The initial optimism, born from confirming her entry into the park, evaporated. The search transformed from a simple recovery mission into a complex, perplexing mystery. Ranger Miller immediately broadened the search perimeter around the campsite, his experienced eye scanning for any sign of a struggle, any drag marks, anything that might explain the missing backpack and tent. The team meticulously combed the surrounding woods, pushing through dense undergrowth, scaling rocky outcrops, and descending into narrow ravines. They found nothing. The frustration mounted with each passing hour. The ground, a mix of hard-packed earth and loose shale, offered few discernible footprints. The thick canopy overhead limited visibility for aerial surveillance. The sheer vastness of the Great Smoky Mountains swallowed their efforts, making every square foot a monumental challenge to cover. They brought in specialized canine units, highly trained search dogs whose keen sense of smell could often pick up scents undetectable to humans. The dogs worked tirelessly, their noses to the ground, their handlers following close behind, their hopes pinned on these silent, furry detectives. But the results were disheartening. The dogs would follow a faint trail from the campsite for a short distance, then, on a stretch of sun-baked rock or across a swift-flowing stream, the scent would abruptly vanish. It was as if Sarah had simply ceased to exist, fading into the very air she breathed. As the days bled into weeks, the story of Sarah Jenkins' disappearance began to ripple beyond the hushed confines of the national park. Local news outlets picked up the story, then regional, then national. Her photograph, that vibrant image of a young woman radiating joy in the face of nature, became a staple on television screens and newspaper front pages. Online forums dedicated to missing persons cases lit up with speculation. The absence of her main gear fueled a plethora of theories, each more unsettling than the last. Some suggested a tragic accident, a fall, an unexpected illness, an encounter with a wild animal, though the lack of any physical evidence of such an event made these theories less convincing. Others leaned towards the idea of a voluntary disappearance, a young woman seeking to escape her life, but those who knew Sarah vehemently denied this. Her deep connections to her family, her promising future, and her meticulous planning made such an act seem utterly inconceivable. Then, there were the darker whispers, the more sinister possibilities that lurked at the edges of every human tragedy. The idea of a third party, an unknown assailant, began to gain traction, especially among online amateur sleuths. The missing gear, they argued, pointed to foul play. Someone had taken her tent, her backpack, perhaps even Sarah herself. Park officials, while publicly cautious, were privately considering all angles. They reviewed every reported incident in the park, however minor, in the preceding months. They interviewed anyone seen in the vicinity of Sarah's trailhead around the time of her disappearance, expanding their net wider and wider. Each potential lead was followed, each theory weighed, but none offered a definitive answer. The investigation became a grueling exercise in sifting through speculation, chasing shadows, and battling the relentless indifference of the wilderness. The silence from the mountains remained profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves, and the rising tide of unanswered questions. As the official search efforts in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park began to wane, scaled back by dwindling resources and a hardening reality, David Jenkins refused to yield. For him, the concept of calling off the search was an unthinkable surrender. His daughter was out there, somewhere in that vast, indifferent wilderness, and he would not rest until he had answers. A former military man, David possessed a steely resolve and a methodical approach to challenges, traits that now served as both a blessing and a torment. While Eleanor remained at home, a prisoner of her own gnawing anxieties, David converted his grief into relentless action. He spent hours poring over topographic maps of the park, tracing and retracing Sarah's intended route, examining every contour line, every shaded ravine. He consulted with experienced backcountry guides, absorbing their knowledge of the terrain, their insights into the subtle cues the mountains offered. He learned about microclimates, about hidden caves and overhangs, about the unpredictable behavior of wildlife, and the even more unpredictable nature of human-environment interactions. He studied aerial photographs, looking for anomalies, for anything that might have been missed by the wider search. His garage transformed into a command center, plastered with maps, marked with colored pins indicating known search areas, unsearched sectors, and potential points of interest. Each pin represented a sliver of hope, a fragment of a plan. David's mornings began before dawn, fueled by strong coffee and an unshakable determination. He would drive to the park, often parking at trailheads far from Sarah's original entry point, hoping to approach the problem from a different angle. He hiked relentlessly, day after day, week after week, pushing his physical limits, driven by an almost primal need to find his daughter. He carried his own specialized gear, a powerful pair of binoculars, a detailed GPS device, a satellite phone, and a small, heavy-duty drone. The drone, a testament to his modern approach, was often his most valuable tool. He would launch it from high points, sending it sweeping silently over vast, otherwise inaccessible stretches of forest, its camera feeding live footage back to his small handheld screen. He meticulously reviewed every frame, searching for a flash of blue from Sarah's backpack, a bright patch of her sleeping bag, anything that stood out against the monotonous green. He focused on areas that the official search teams, bound by protocols and manpower limitations, might have overlooked. He explored the deepest parts of ravines, areas considered too dangerous or too dense for large-scale grid searches. He investigated the mouths of caves, the undersides of rock ledges, places where someone seeking shelter might have taken refuge. He paid particular attention to areas where the search dogs had lost their scent, believing that an abrupt end to a trail could sometimes indicate an intentional deviation or an unforeseen event that had led Sarah off the obvious path. He learned to read the subtle signs of the wilderness: broken branches, scuffed rocks, flattened vegetation, any indication of human passage. He became intimately familiar with the sounds of the forest, distinguishing the rustle of leaves from the subtle crunch of footsteps, the cry of a hawk from a distant human shout. His solo missions were fraught with personal danger. He encountered wildlife, black bears, deer, and coyotes. He navigated treacherous terrain, enduring sudden thunderstorms and biting cold. But none of these physical challenges deterred him. The emotional toll, however, was immense. Each empty trail, each silent ravine, each exhaustive search of an area that yielded no clues, chipped away at his resolve. There were moments of crushing despair, when the enormity of the mountains seemed to mock his solitary efforts, when the hope he so fiercely clung to threatened to unravel. He would return home late, exhausted, his clothes dirty, his body aching, only to find Eleanor's tear-filled eyes asking the unspoken question, "Any news?" And he would shake his head, the same answer, day after day. Yet the image of Sarah's smiling face, the memory of her boundless spirit, fueled his unwavering determination. He was a father on an unyielding path, driven by a love that transcended logic, pushing deeper into the wild, convinced that somewhere, hidden within its vastness, lay the truth about his daughter. The mountains might be silent, but he would not be. As autumn painted the great Smoky Mountains in hues of fiery red and burnt orange, the relentless passage of time brought with it a chilling shift in the search for Sarah. The vibrant greens of summer had given way to the stark beauty of the colder months, a visual metaphor for the fading hope that clung precariously to the Jenkins family. Park officials, after weeks of exhaustive ground and air searches, made the painful decision to scale back the active operation. The official statement was diplomatic, acknowledging the incredible efforts made and the lack of new leads. For Eleanor and David, it was a declaration of defeat, a formal acknowledgement that their daughter was now considered a long-term missing person case, shrouded in the impenetrable mystery of the wilderness. The air grew colder, biting at the exposed skin, mirroring the chill that had settled deep in Eleanor's bones. The initial outpouring of public support, while heartfelt, began to wane. The news cycle moved on to other stories, other tragedies. Sarah's bright, hopeful face, once ubiquitous, appeared less frequently, replaced by new headlines, new concerns. For David, however, the change in seasons only intensified his solitary crusade. The falling leaves stripped the forest of its summer cloak, revealing new lines of sight, new potential avenues for exploration. He continued his daily treks, often alone, sometimes accompanied by a handful of dedicated volunteers who refused to give up. He learned to navigate the treacherous icy patches, the hidden ravines filled with freezing meltwater. The silence of the winter woods was profound, an echoing emptiness that seemed to amplify his own growing despair. Eleanor, meanwhile, found herself trapped in a different kind of wilderness. Her home, once a sanctuary of warmth and family, now felt like a mausoleum. Sarah's untouched room, her favorite mug still on the kitchen counter, a half-read book by her bedside. These everyday objects became monuments to her absence, each one a fresh stab of pain. She spent countless hours staring out the window, her gaze fixed on the distant tree line, as if willing Sarah to materialize from the mists. Sleep offered no escape. Only restless dreams haunted by fragmented images of Sarah's face, always just out of reach. Her days were a blur of numb routine, punctuated by sudden, overwhelming waves of grief. She joined online support groups for families of missing persons, finding a grim solidarity in shared suffering, but little comfort. The holidays arrived, bringing with them a cruel reminder of their fractured family. Thanksgiving dinner, usually a boisterous affair filled with laughter and warmth, was a somber meal, the empty chair at the table a gaping wound. Christmas lights, twinkling cheerfully in other homes, seemed to mock their quiet sorrow. Every family gathering, every celebration, highlighted Sarah's absence, making the pain fresh and raw. The hope, once a burning flame, had dwindled to a tiny, flickering ember, threatening to extinguish completely with each passing day. The official search had ceased. The public had largely forgotten. But for Eleanor and David, Sarah's story was a perpetual, agonizing present. The mountains remained impassive, holding their secrets close, and the world moved on, leaving them behind in a silent, desolate vigil. 15 months had passed since Sarah Jenkins vanished into the mists of the Great Smoky Mountains. The case, though never officially closed, had gathered dust in the cold files of the park's unsolved mysteries. The official searches had ceased, and even David's relentless, solitary treks had become less frequent, his body weary, his spirit bruised by endless disappointment. The mountains, however, remained timeless, indifferent to human sorrow, continuing their ancient cycles of life and death. It was mid-October of 2024, a crisp autumn day, when Ranger Jack Peterson embarked on a routine, yet crucial assignment. Jack was not a search and rescue specialist. His expertise lay in ornithology, the study of birds. His task that day was to monitor known raptor nests, particularly those of golden eagles, powerful hunters that soared majestically over the highest peaks. It was part of a long-term conservation effort, tracking nesting success and population health. He carried a pair of high-powered binoculars, a notepad, and a keen eye for the subtle movements of the wild. His route took him to a remote, rarely traversed section of the park, high on a treacherous rocky ridge overlooking a vast forested valley. This particular area was known for its sheer cliffs and deep crevices, a perfect isolated habitat for the reclusive golden eagles. He located the familiar colossal nest, a massive structure of sticks and branches precariously balanced on a narrow ledge high on a sheer rock face. Through his binoculars, Jack began his meticulous observation. He noted the size of the fledglings, the behavior of the adult birds, the general condition of the nest itself. It was then, amidst the jumble of sticks and bones, that something unusual caught his eye. A flash of color, incongruous with the earthy tones of the nest and its contents, stood out. It was a rectangle, sleek and dark, with a small, reflective surface. It looked artificial, distinctly out of place in this wild, remote sanctuary. Jack adjusted his focus, squinting through the powerful lenses. His heart gave a sudden hard thud. It looked like a smartphone. Not just any phone, but a modern one, a device that screamed human presence in a place where only the wind and the eagles should reign. His mind immediately raced to Sarah Jenkins. He knew the story, of course. Every ranger did. It was a tragedy that had haunted the park for over a year. Could this be a connection? He considered the possibility of it being an old device, dropped by a careless hiker years ago, but the sleek design suggested otherwise. It looked relatively new. The golden eagle, known for its opportunistic scavenging, sometimes carried unusual items to its nest, anything that might appear interesting or useful. But a smartphone? This was an unprecedented find. Jack knew the delicacy of the situation. This was not a find he could simply dismiss or retrieve casually. The nest was a protected site. Ranger Jack Peterson, his heart still thrumming with the adrenaline of his discovery, knew the utmost care was paramount. The smartphone, nestled precariously in the eagle's nest high on the remote ridge, was not just an unusual artifact. It was a potential key, a fragile link to a 15-month-old mystery that had haunted the park and its staff. He immediately radioed his supervisor, Ranger Chief Reynolds, a seasoned veteran with decades of experience navigating the complexities of park incidents. Jack's voice, though calm, conveyed the gravity of his find. "Chief, I've got a visual on something extraordinary in an active golden eagle nest, high on the eastern ridge of Black Balsam Knob. Looks like a smartphone. Could be related to the Jenkins case." Chief Reynolds' response was immediate and decisive. He understood the delicate balance required, preserving a protected wildlife habitat while investigating a potential major break in a high-profile missing persons case. A specialized team was quickly assembled. It included a park climbing expert, a wildlife biologist to ensure minimal disturbance to the nest and its inhabitants, and a forensic technician from the local sheriff's department, equipped with the tools to handle potential evidence. The ascent to the nest was slow and arduous, a testament to the unforgiving terrain. The climbing expert meticulously rigged ropes, ensuring a secure path to the treacherous ledge. The wildlife biologist, using her expertise, monitored the adult eagles, ensuring their presence did not escalate into aggression while the retrieval was underway. Finally, with painstaking care, the forensic technician, under the watchful eye of Ranger Jack, reached the nest. The phone was indeed a smartphone, remarkably well preserved despite its exposure to the elements. Its screen was dark, but there were no visible cracks or major signs of external damage. It was carefully placed into an evidence bag, sealed, and meticulously documented. The entire process was filmed, ensuring a chain of custody and an unblemished record. The team descended, the precious cargo secured. Back at the park headquarters, the tension in the air was palpable. The smartphone, though a silent black rectangle, held the promise of answers, or perhaps more questions. It was carefully transported to a specialized forensics lab, a facility equipped to handle data recovery from damaged or unresponsive electronic devices. The lead technician, a quiet woman with sharp, analytical eyes, began the painstaking process of attempting to extract its contents. She connected the device to sophisticated equipment, running diagnostic tests, trying various methods to bypass potential locks and access the internal memory. The battery was long dead, but the internal components, surprisingly, appeared intact. Hours stretched into a day, then another. The park rangers, along with David and Eleanor, waited with bated breath. The initial excitement was tempered by the fear of disappointment. What if the phone contained nothing? What if the data was corrupted? What if it belonged to someone else entirely? The silence from the lab was agonizing. Finally, on the evening of the second day, a call came through to Chief Reynolds. The technician's voice was calm, professional, but beneath it, a hint of awe. "Chief," she stated, "we've got something." The internal memory is surprisingly intact. We're recovering data. And judging by the metadata, the phone belongs to Sarah Jenkins. A collective gasp filled the room where David and Eleanor sat. The news was a seismic shift, a crucial piece of the puzzle finally emerging from the long, dark unknown. The phone held her photographs, her videos, her digital footprint. It was a direct line back to her, a potential witness to her last moments. The long period of conjecture was coming to an end. The truth, however unsettling, was about to be revealed. The small, dark smartphone, once an ordinary device connecting Sarah to her world, transformed into a silent digital witness within the forensic lab. The technicians worked with a methodical intensity, carefully extracting and piecing together the fragmented data. For hours, the screens flickered with lines of code, algorithms whirred, and the quiet hum of sophisticated machinery filled the sterile room. Then, slowly, painfully, the contents began to emerge. The first breakthrough came with the recovery of her photo gallery. Images of the stunning Great Smoky Mountains filled the screen, sweeping vistas, close-ups of delicate wildflowers, a curious deer peeking through the trees. Each photograph was a testament to Sarah's passion for nature, her keen eye for beauty. The timestamps, meticulously recorded by the phone, created a chronological breadcrumb trail of her journey. The last few photos were taken at her planned campsite, confirming her presence there. There was a selfie. Sarah smiling, her face a little flushed from the hike, the towering hemlocks behind her. It was a picture of pure, unadulterated joy. This image was time-stamped just before sunset on her first day. Then came the videos. The technicians recovered several short clips. The first few were innocuous, a sweeping panorama of a valley, a close-up of a buzzing hummingbird. But the final video, retrieved from a corrupted file and painstakingly reconstructed, sent a ripple of disbelief and then a wave of cold dread through the lab. It was only seconds long, shaky and dark, recorded just minutes after the last photo. The camera was pointed downwards, capturing the uneven ground. The audio, however, was crystal clear. It began with a low rumble, faint at first, then rapidly escalating into a deafening roar. The ground itself seemed to tremble. There was a sound of cracking earth, the unmistakable groan of ancient rock under immense pressure. Sarah's voice, a terrified gasp, was barely audible above the rising cacophony. Then, a sickening lurch, the sound of tearing fabric, and a sudden, violent thud. The video abruptly cut out. The forensic technician replayed the clip countless times, analyzing every sound, every tremor. She cross-referenced the timestamp with geological activity data for the region. The conclusion was horrifyingly simple, yet devastatingly profound. Sarah had been caught in a localized, rapid landslide, not a massive, sprawling event, but a sudden, contained collapse of a section of the ridge. Such events were rare, but not unheard of in the geologically active Smokies, especially after periods of heavy rain, which had occurred just days before Sarah's hike. The specific location of her campsite, nestled against a steep, unstable slope, had made it particularly vulnerable. The implications were clear. Sarah had not been attacked. She had not been taken. Her missing tent and backpack were not evidence of foul play, but rather had been swept away, buried, or crushed by the sheer force of the moving earth and rock. The search dogs losing the scent on the rocky ground, David's inability to find any trace. It all made tragic sense. The landslide, though localized, had been powerful enough to erase almost every sign of her presence, burying her and her gear deep beneath tons of earth and rock, effectively sealing away the truth for 15 months. The phone, perhaps dislodged by the initial tremor or carried by some fluke of the shifting earth, had then been picked up by the opportunistic eagle and carried to its nest, a macabre trophy in a bird's home. The mystery, which had fueled so much fear and speculation, was finally unveiled. The truth was not a human monster, but the indifferent, untamable power of the mountain itself. The startling revelation from Sarah's smartphone, the brief, terrifying video clip capturing the sounds and tremors of a geological event, transformed the entire scope of the investigation. What had begun as a missing persons case, then evolved into a baffling mystery with whispers of foul play, now became a forensic geological inquiry. Ranger Chief Reynolds, a man whose career had seen countless wilderness tragedies, immediately understood the profound shift. He contacted a team of geological experts from the United States Geological Survey, or USGS, providing them with the recovered video and audio data, along with Sarah's known itinerary and the precise coordinates of her last confirmed location. The geologists, renowned for their expertise in terrain stability and seismic activity, began their meticulous analysis. They studied the specific geological makeup of the Black Balsam Knob area, known for its steep slopes and layers of fractured rock. They examined satellite imagery, looking for any recent changes in the landscape, any subtle shifts that might indicate instability. They cross-referenced the timestamp of Sarah's video with records from nearby seismic sensors. While no major earthquake had occurred, the sensors sometimes registered localized tremors, too small to be widely felt but significant enough to cause ground instability. Their findings confirmed the chilling conclusion drawn from Sarah's phone. The unique combination of a heavy rain event in the days prior, saturating the soil and rock, followed by a minor, imperceptible seismic tremor, had created the perfect conditions for a sudden, localized landslide. It wasn't a sprawling, destructive force that would devastate an entire mountainside, but a rapid, contained collapse, a sort of geological trap door opening beneath Sarah's very feet. The specific angle of the slope where her campsite was located, the presence of an underlying fault line, and the saturation of the earth had made that particular spot a ticking time bomb. The geologists explained that such an event would have been instantaneous, offering no time for escape. The ground beneath her tent, and Sarah herself, would have simply given way, plummeting downwards into a fissure or a deep crevice, then becoming covered by tons of dislodged earth, rock, and vegetation. This explained the baffling disappearance of her main backpack and tent. They had been swept away and buried in the same fatal cascade. It explained why the search dogs had lost their scent, as the original ground surface and any trace of Sarah had been obliterated. It also explained the chilling silence that had followed, as the mountain quickly reasserted its ancient, impassive dominion over the newly formed landscape. For David and Eleanor, this scientific explanation, while devastating, brought a strange, agonizing form of closure. It was not the answers they had prayed for, but it was an answer nonetheless. Their daughter had not been a victim of human malice, nor had she suffered a prolonged, agonizing struggle. She had been swallowed by the very wilderness she loved, a victim of its unpredictable, raw power. The mountains, which had held their secrets so tightly for 15 long months, had finally yielded the truth, cold and unyielding as the granite itself. The investigation now shifted from a search for a missing person to a precise, calculated effort to locate the site of the landslide and, hopefully, Sarah's remains. The knowledge of how she died did not lessen their grief, but it replaced the terrifying unknown with a concrete, albeit tragic, reality. The focus was now on bringing her home. Armed with the precise geological data and the harrowing video from Sarah's phone, a new, highly specialized recovery operation was launched. This was no longer a frantic search for a missing person, but a meticulous, scientific excavation. The team consisted of park rangers, once again led by Ranger Miller, but this time augmented by structural engineers, geophysicists, and search and rescue personnel trained in confined space and technical recoveries. David, though not permitted on the active recovery site due to safety protocols, remained close by, a silent, watchful presence, his eyes fixed on the section of the mountain where the truth now lay. Eleanor stayed at home, clinging to David's updates, her heart a fragile vessel of hope and dread. The target area, the exact coordinates identified by the USGS, was a section of the slope directly below where Sarah's campsite had been. It was a chaotic mix of dislodged earth, fractured rock, and uprooted trees, all shrouded by dense, unbroken forest. The initial approach was cautious. Geologists used ground-penetrating radar to map the subsurface, identifying anomalies that might indicate buried objects or voids. Engineers assessed the stability of the remaining slope, ensuring that the recovery team would not trigger another collapse. It was slow, painstaking work, each step taken with deliberate precision. Days turned into another week. The recovery team worked tirelessly, employing specialized digging equipment and hand tools. They cleared away tons of debris, carefully sifting through the earth, looking for any sign, any fragment. The emotional weight of the task was immense. Every shovel of dirt, every cleared rock brought them closer to the heartbreaking reality. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and the quiet sounds of shovels scraping against rock were the only audible testament to their grim task. Then, on a cold, overcast morning, a call went out over the radio, a single terse phrase: "We have a positive indication." The geophysicist had detected a significant anomaly deep within a fissure, an anomaly consistent with human remains. The atmosphere on the mountain shifted, a wave of profound solemnity washing over the team. The subsequent hours were an exercise in extreme care and respect. The recovery specialists, working in a confined and dangerous space, meticulously excavated the site. Finally, deep within the buried earth, they found her, not whole, but unmistakably Sarah. Her remains were discovered amidst the debris, a testament to the sudden and overwhelming force of the landslide. Near her, they also found fragments of her distinctive blue and gray backpack, the remains of her tent, and other pieces of her outdoor gear, all crushed and distorted by the immense pressure. There was no doubt. It was Sarah. The recovery was conducted with the utmost dignity. Her remains were carefully transferred, then transported from the wilderness. When David received the call, his heart, which had been in a state of suspended agony for 15 months, finally broke, yet also found a sliver of peace. The agonizing unknown was gone. Sarah was no longer lost in the vast, indifferent expanse of the mountains. She was coming home. The journey was not the homecoming they had envisioned, full of laughter and shared stories, but it was a homecoming nonetheless. The truth, however devastating, had brought a painful, yet necessary conclusion to their desperate search. The memorial service for Sarah Jenkins was held not in a grand church, but outdoors, beneath the vast open sky, on a gentle slope overlooking the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It was a place she had loved, a place where the air itself seemed to breathe with the spirit of the wilderness. Family, friends, park rangers, and even some of the dedicated volunteers who had joined David's private search gathered, their faces etched with shared grief, yet also with a newfound sense of understanding. Eleanor, her hand clasped tightly in David's, wore a quiet dignity. The initial, unbearable agony of not knowing had been replaced by a different kind of pain, a deep, persistent ache, but one that now carried the burden of truth. David spoke first, his voice steady, though occasionally catching on a wave of emotion. He thanked everyone who had searched, who had hoped, who had grieved with them. He recounted Sarah's infectious passion for nature, her meticulous preparation, her vibrant spirit. He spoke of the long, dark months of uncertainty, the torment of not knowing. And then he spoke of the smartphone, the eagle's nest, and the geological verdict. He explained how the mountain, in its majestic, indifferent power, had claimed his daughter, not through malice, but through a rare, sudden act of nature. Sarah loved these mountains, he said, his gaze sweeping across the distant peaks. She respected their power, and in the end, that power became her resting place. The service was a tapestry of shared memories, punctuated by moments of profound silence. Friends recounted Sarah's boundless energy, her quick wit, her unwavering kindness. Ranger Miller, standing among the attendees, reflected on the dedication of his team and the unexpected turn the investigation had taken. The case of Sarah Jenkins, once a baffling, unsolved mystery, now served as a sobering reminder of the raw, untamable forces that exist beneath the serene beauty of the natural world. It was a stark lesson that even the most prepared and experienced adventurers are ultimately at the mercy of the earth's unpredictable moods. For Eleanor and David, the ability to give Sarah a proper burial, to lay her to rest in a place she cherished, brought a semblance of peace. The raw, open wound of uncertainty began, slowly, to scar over. They knew that the grief would never truly vanish. It would always be a part of them, a quiet companion. But now, they could mourn their daughter with the knowledge of what had happened, free from the torment of endless speculation. The truth, however tragic, had provided a form of solace, allowing them to begin the long, arduous journey of healing. Sarah's story became a quiet legend among the park rangers and the local community, a poignant tale whispered on the wind through the valleys. It was a reminder that while the wilderness offers unparalleled beauty and serenity, it also harbors immense, untamed power. The great Smoky Mountains, with their ancient forests and mist-shrouded peaks, remained as majestic as ever. The rivers still ran cold and clear, the wildlife still roamed free, and the trails continued to call to adventurers seeking solace and challenge. But for those who knew Sarah's story, the beauty was now tinged with a deeper understanding, a profound respect for the earth's unpredictable heart. Her legacy lived on not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but also as a powerful, enduring testament to the delicate balance between humanity and the formidable, often unforgiving power of nature.